How you doing, guys? This is Eric from secretoftheinternet.com, bythermite.com. This video is about my prophecies starting to come true. I'm not talking about literal prophecies, but I have made several predictions over the past few months, and many of them have come true or are starting to come true, and I'm going to go over those. First of all, obviously, my predictions for the primary were pretty much dead on, and I won some money in the process of being correct about who is going to be the primary winner in the Republican Party. I was put more chances of Bernie getting the nomination, but we've come to find out that there was actual fraudulent rigging of the Democratic primary, so it's not surprising. Not that he necessarily would have won otherwise, but he certainly would have had a better shot. And but we know now that there was some literal, actual fraudulent activity going on there. But the ones that I have claimed recently that are starting to come to pass, or more recently, are a few things. One is the shifting of the polls as we get closer to the election. Some people are going to say that this is a result of the FBI reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton, and that's part of it. I mean, that is going to cause more of a shift in Trump's direction. But I had also already predicted, it had started right before that, and it was going to happen anyway. Maybe not as dramatically, but it would have happened because the pollsters know that that they're pushing a little too hard in Hillary's direction, and they want to be more correct, or at least closer to what the final outcome is going to be, because that's how they make money and get credibility for the next election cycle. So we're seeing that shift happen not only in national polls, but in state polls and all sorts of other things as well. I was correct about, it appears, this hasn't been proven yet, but it appears that I was correct in saying that the black vote specifically will be less turnout for Hillary than it was in 2012. And there's an article here actually by the Huffington Post, link will be in the description. It says black voter turnout so far is not good for Hillary Clinton. Who would have thought? Me, I would have thought. It says with a week to go before Election Day, over 25 million Americans have already cast their ballots via early voting. If this year is similar to 2012, those early votes will be nearly 20% of the final turnout. This could be a big deal. It could be a big deal that black voters aren't opting for early voting as much as they did 4 years ago, especially in key swing states like Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. Low turnout among African Americans could hurt Hillary Clinton. No shit. Saying North Carolina seeing fewer black voters casting their ballots early this year. They accounted for 22% of early voters as of Monday, compared to over 27% of early voters in 2012. So right there, we're seeing a 5% decrease in the early voters in a group that is usually 90% for Hillary Clinton. Now, I tend to think that Obama's going to get more than 10% of the black vote. I think he'll get 15, maybe even closer to 20. And I also think that of the people who aren't showing up, of the black voters, they're more likely to be the Hillary voters that aren't showing up than they are the Trump supporters. Because when you're in a group like that is 90% usually supporting a certain party, you have to be pretty fired up to be supporting someone other, some other candidate, to leave the reservation or the plantation, so to speak, and actually break free from that mindset. And so I think the people that are showing up are going to be even more likely to be supporting Trump. So we'll see what happens. But the fact that the turnout is appearing to be lower, that was my prediction. That seems to be coming to pass. So poll shifting, lower turnout. Another big one that people gave me shit for was that the polls could be wrong about the monster vote, among other things, even if they're not specifically purposefully fraudulent, and that they're just not including certain groups or using certain methodology to account for this election cycle. Polling uses a lot of methodology that in many cases is done with the intention of trying to be accurate, but it's not determinative. Like if you say, oh, I don't poll people who haven't voted in the past because they don't normally vote, that's not determinative. That doesn't make that happen that way in the future. It's just backwards tested. It says looking back. But if you have evidence that that's going to be different this time and you don't take it into account, then your model is going to be flawed. And that's what I think is happening. And we have an article that was actually linked to by, I think it was Frank Luntz. But the article itself is from the Washington Post, and it tries to be as favorable towards Hillary Clinton as possible in a lot of ways and tries to still be negative toward Trump. but it is called Could Pollsters Be Missing Hidden Trump Voters? Link to this will also be in the description. And it goes to talk specifically about a couple factors that I mentioned, the shy Trump voter and the gaps there and the different kinds of polling, and even more importantly, the monster vote. It says, where do you see the final? Just a second. There's an important part here in the end. It says, this doesn't answer the question about Trump, though. Is there a wave of voters slipping toward the polls that the pollsters aren't catching? He's wrong that the polls are biased, but he could be right that they're wrong. By the time we know, we'll know who came out to vote, meaning that we'll also know who won the election, and Donald Trump probably won't care about the polls anymore. Which to me seems like they're saying he's going to win, because, but either way afterwards, I guess he won't care about the polls. But it says early signs suggest that the electorate that comes out this year won't look like the 2012 electorate in one way. Heavy black counties are voting less this year. Again, that goes back to what I was saying. So this is exactly what I was talking about the polls may not even be fraudulently wrong, they're just wrong. It says one determination pollsters use to determine how likely a voter is to vote is to ask them. People who say they're only 50-50 on voting probably won't be considered likely to vote, so they probably wouldn't be included in those numbers. But that means some eventual voters are necessarily missed. Yeah, so there's more information in this article here. And but people are starting to talk about the stuff that I've been talking about for weeks, if not months, even in mainstream media posts or legacy media posts like Washington Post, Huffington Post, things like that are not Trump friendly, to say the least. One thing I will say that I probably got wrong, the only specific kind of prediction or hunch that I mentioned that is not likely to turn out to be true, is I gave early on, I said, this was still before I think Trump had won the primaries, I had said I was predicting that Hillary Clinton would not make it to November 8th as the Democratic Party candidate, that she might win the primary, but that she would have to drop out for some reason or another. And that doesn't appear to be the case. Like I said, there's still a little bit of time left, so we don't know for sure. Anything could happen. And she got damn close on a few occasions, literally passing out and having to be thrown into a van. FBI investigations that almost brought an indictment and would have if everything was done above board. And so I had factored those things in and determined that there was a likely chance that she might not make it. And it appears with only a week left that they're probably going to have her dragged across the finish line. It would take some extreme things, probably an enormous medical emergency or something along those lines, for her to drop out with less than a week to go, or right at a week to go. So it appears that I was wrong on that one, but that was, yeah, one out of however many I made probably isn't too bad. And that was more of a hunch than anything else. But it was something that I said would be likely to happen, and it didn't happen. So in the efforts of just putting all my cards out there. But when it comes to most of the other things, I've been pretty right on. Polls shifting and leading into the final week. Black voter turnout already appears to be depressed versus last time. And the polls, not including the monster vote and not including the shy Trump voters, an enthusiasm gap and things like that, which is also mentioned in this article, the enthusiasm gap between Romney and how the polls were actually underrepresented Obama's performance because of the enthusiasm gap. Those things all are being covered by mainstream media now and appear to be coming true. So you may now listen to the rest of my prophecies with renewed trust and believability. Thanks for watching.